Greetings, and welcome to the WCASA Social Media Podcast Series. This is Episode 3, RSS. I'm your host, Stephen Montagna, the Violence Prevention Communications Coordinator for the Wisconsin Coalition Against Sexual Assault. So, what is RSS? Technically, RSS doesn't really fit the profile of social media, what we usually consider social media, because it's not really a two-way communication modality. It's not something where you talk back. But I wanted to include it because I think RSS is very useful and very powerful and can be helpful with trying to gather a good, quick snapshot of information that's out there on the web. Now, technically, RSS is really meant to stand for RDF Site Summary, and RDF in turn stands for Resource Description Framework, and you can see how complicated this all starts to get. But when we use RSS, it's usually referred to as really simple syndication, and that's really what it is. And you'll notice that little orange icon. It's sometimes blue, but typically orange, and it typically looks like that. It's like a dot with a series of curved slashes, which are meant to be evocative of radio waves or sound waves going out, sort of communication. And anytime you see that little icon on the site, it's a sign that that site is syndicating or publishing in RSS format some or all of its content. What does that mean? Well, if you think about a news site, New York Times, Wisconsin State Journal, any of those, and you think about them having multiple stories. And of course you can click through those stories as individual pages. And if you go to their main front page, you'll see a spread of headlines, and you can sort of scroll down and around and see what's there. But sometimes you want to get a good quick glimpse at what is on that page or a collection of pages under a particular topic. So what RSS does is it takes all of these different stories and puts them out in what's called an XML document. XML is simply extensible markup language. So it's like the HTML that drives the World Wide Web, but it's slightly different. And it's different in that it produces a file that's sort of like a mini database, taking all of these different articles and providing title, author, date, synopsis, and a link for them. And the link is usually the link to where the actual full text of the document resides, or the story resides. And so what that means is that this XML document allows you to look at multiple entries, if you will. So rather than having to read every story, you get a good quick glimpse at usually the title and date, sometimes the title and synopsis and date, sometimes the title and source and date of these varying articles. So it's a really good way of just getting a great quick glimpse. And because it's XML, you can't just view it in the web browser natively, but there are a bunch of applications that will allow you to read these documents. And so that's what we usually refer to as readers, sometimes referred to as aggregators. And there are online and desktop varieties. The most popular, and in my opinion most useful online version being Google Reader, so we'll look at that. And I'll also mention FeedDemon, which is a Windows-based desktop RSS reader, and there's also NetNewsWire and Reader on the Mac side, which I'm more familiar with. I'll show you Reader in a little bit. But let's just look at a demo, and to demo this, I'm simply going to switch out to Safari, where I've already got open my Google Reader page. So first of all, this does mean that you have to have a Google account. And again, a Google account is free. And has the bonus of when you sign up for Google, you get access to all of the Google services and applications. And many of you may be familiar with Google Docs. We'll be talking about Google Plus in a future podcast. So not a bad idea to create a Google identity, free Google account, have Gmail access, even if you don't use it for your work email, have it as a separate email. And you get access to Google Reader. So you sign into your account, and then what you can do is on those pages where you see that little icon, and I'm just going to go ahead and open up another tab and go to, right off the top of my head, New York Times comes to mind. And you don't always see the icon right away with New York Times. typically will in fact scroll all the way down to the bottom, and you'll see right down here at the bottom there's that icon, and there's RSS. And in this case, clicking on this will actually bring up a list of different aspects or different subtopics in the newspaper that are feeds. So let's just say, for instance, I wanted to get the US feed, and in fact you can see it further breaks down. So let's just go ahead and we'll just select this one, and if I mouse over it, you may see down below here in the browser status bar, you'll see New York Times Services XML. So it's showing you that's an XML file. I'm going to control click on this and copy the link. And then I'm just going to go ahead and close that tab. And you'll see in Google Reader we've got this subscribe button. And so these are basically effectively subscriptions. What you're putting in is a feed address, feed URL. So I'm going to go ahead and paste in that URL and hit add. And when I say subscribe, what this means is that periodically, either whenever I revisit the Google Reader page or at an interval in which I set in my settings in Google Reader will revisit that feed and download the most recent content. But I'll go ahead and click add, and you'll see momentarily that in fact here it is, and it shows up in red on the side here along with my other subscriptions. And then in the window here is populated whatever that feed content is. And you can see that it gives us the title and the beginning of the synopsis, and on the right hand side the date, and in this case specific time that it was published. And if I click on the title, this expands, and you'll see that I get more information, in this case author, and the full synopsis. And the title is listed again, and you notice it's blue, and indeed if I mouse over it, you'll see my cursor has changed to a little pointed hand that tells me that's a clickable link, and in fact I click on that and that will take me to the actual article. So that's how RSS works, and if I click in Google Reader here back on the title there, it just collapses it. And you can see that it gives me a real quick glance at what's happening. Now this is an example of looking at something from a news site, but what about other things? One of the reasons I like Google Reader is that you actually can save searches as RSS feeds. So you'll see down here, in fact, I have sexual assault, and then it's cut off. It looks like we, but it is indeed Wisconsin. And this, in fact, I'll select it, is a Google search for sexual assault and Wisconsin. And this is Google's search engine, and it is anything related to a news article that has both the term sexual assault and the word Wisconsin in it. Now, in some cases, I'll tell you that the search process is not perfect. In some cases, it will come up with matches that match because there's an ad in there that has the word Wisconsin in it. But 9 times out of 10, we will get stuff that is related to sexual assault and something that happened in the state of Wisconsin. And so you can see here the headlines, and again, clicking on any of these headlines, man arrested for assaulting woman in Williams-Steger Park from the Oshkosh Northwestern. And so I can read a little synopsis of it and, of course, click on the link and follow that to the actual article. You can also, of course, I've got just a few things here on my left-hand side, but you notice that you can group things. So I've got a couple of folders, and you can move things around in folders or organize them. One of the other things that's great about Google Reader is that it is web-based, but you might not want to work web-based. You might want to work with a native application on your desktop or even on your mobile device. In fact, you may want to do that in multiple locations. A lot of these applications, it turns out, use Google Reader feeds. That is to say, you can synchronize the application with your Google Reader account. And the handy thing about that is you create a Google Reader account, you populate it with a dozen or 2 dozen or however many subscriptions you're interested in following, and then you, for instance, put an application on your smartphone and synchronize it with that Google account. And then if you've got access either via Wi-Fi or your phone service, your cell service, 3G or 4G, you will basically be able to be up to date on those subscriptions through your mobile device and or through your laptop if you're managing stuff with a desktop application. It can come very much in handy. Let's move out now to Reader. Now, I mentioned this is a desktop RSS reader application for the Mac operating system, but it's very analogous to what you would see for a Feed Daemon or any other application on the Windows side. And in this case, we are plugged into my Google Reader account, but to my personal Google Reader account, not the WCASA Google Reader account that I was in over in Google when I was showing you Google Reader. So you'll see a lot more different things, even though you'll see some of the same searches because I have searches set up to keep track of Google alerts for rape and Wisconsin, for violence prevention and Wisconsin, and for rape in general. So these are any news articles in which the terms rape and Wisconsin are coming up. And again, you'll see that you get a very quick list that you can scroll through of articles from various sources. And if you click on one, it will bring up, it basically pulls the data from the XML, which is that title and that synopsis. And then, of course, clicking on the title will then, within Reader, it has its own browser built in, and it will pull in the article content right from the website. And the really handy thing about this, besides being able to read through the content if I wanted to, is that a lot of these applications also give you options. For instance, Reader has these buttons up in the top corner here where I could actually open this in my Safari web browser if I wanted to, email a link to this article to someone else or to myself, tweet about it if I have a Twitter account, save it out to Instapaper, which is a service we'll be talking about in a future podcast, or to Evernote, which is also a service we'll be talking about in a future podcast. Or if I want to add it to, in this case, Safari has a reading list built in. So basically it allows me to keep track of, like, okay, this is something I can't read right now, but I might want to read it at a later date, or maybe it's an article that's pertinent to a project that I'm working on, or some other thing I'm going to be writing in the future, like maybe a grant I'll be putting together. I might want to save that out to something else, to a reading list or to my Evernote or Instapaper lists. That I, so I can keep track of it and access that article later. So that's handy to have all that type of functionality. And it's also handy to have these applications which hook right into my Google Reader account, so I can keep everything synchronized. So I think that's all for now. It's just a basic overview of RSS. If you have further questions, please feel free to contact me. You can also find out more about social media at our social media web pages, part of our WCASA.org website. I hope this has been helpful, and I will see you in the next podcast in the future.